Guys, welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be a more updated version of the Natalie Bray's block. Now I already do have one on my channel which was done in centimeters, and as per request from you guys wanting me to also do this block in inches is what this video is going to be all about. Now let's get right into this tutorial. Starting with here, I have the measurements written out here in inches, and then this part that is written in red is in centimeters. So for this size, I will be drafting a plus size because the last time I did it in my size. So I wanted to draft a different size so you guys can, see this pattern in a different light. So here is the measurements, and then here is the part for the proportion table. Now I haven't written out the proportion part because this bust size is not on the table of average measurements. So basically we have to grade it to have the proportion that matches with this bust size. So to do this, we're going to grade it based on how it was graded here. Now before we get into all the grading, I just want to take a moment to explain how to use this proportion table, because I feel like some people may have been using it wrong when it comes to what part of the measurement and then what part of the proportion part of the table. So here, if you look at this page, it says measurements, proportions. Now measurements, this is basically just like a size chart, kind of like the way you have a size 2, a size 4, 6, and so on. This is just how it's been done. So basically this is just an average measurement. And as we all know, especially when you're a fashion designer or a seamstress making clothes for different sizes of people, you would find out that sometimes these measurements, it's not the same always. Like you don't have a perfect figure. Sometimes the waist might be bigger, sometimes the hip might be smaller than the waist. So for example, you have a bust size that is 96 centimeters, right? And in inches that is, so 96 centimeters in inches is about 37 3/4 inches. So you have a bust size of 96 centimeters. Now the bust size is just to let you know at what point you'll be using the proportion part of the table, right? It's not because you have a bust size of 96, then you go ahead and use the hip measurement as 102, as 72, and the likes. No. The only thing you need is the bust size to let you know what part of the proportion table you'll be using. So in actual sense, the most important part of this table is the part that says proportions. Now, if you have a bust size that is not listed here, but it falls within range, for example, I have a bust 95 centimeters, or let's say a bust 94 centimeters. And here there's 92, but there's no 94, and then there's 96. So the best part of the proportion table to use is the next size up to whatever measurement you have. So if your bust size is bust 94, you're going to use 96 as the part of your proportion. Instead of going a size down, it's better to go a size up. Another thing is grading. Now, if you've come to the point where the bust size you're working with is not on the proportion part, because this is where the size ends, you can always grade it based on how it's graded here. So here you see there's a sequence that this follows. So here the point O is increasing by 0.5, 0.5 mostly, right? Now here you see how they have 4 here for this, and then the next size they have 4, here they have 4.5, and then 4.5. So the next part will be 5 cm, right? And then here you see how just follow the sequence in which they use in grading it. That's how you grade it up to match whatever bust size you're making. So in actual sense, the next bust size that is going to follow after 116 is going to be 120, because look at the sequence. The bust size here is graded with 4 cm up or down for a size smaller, and then 4 cm up for a size larger. So if we were to grade for about 120 centimeters. So here, the next one will be 120 centimeters. And then point O here will be 5 cm. Here, point O, the back width will be 9 cm. And then here, also, this will be 25 because you see how it's just increasing with 0.5, 0.5. And then here as well, here we might do a 7.5. So here we'll do about 11 cm and so forth. So that's how this proportion table is used. Next, I'm going to show you how I'm going to be converting the centimeters into inches. Now, when you look at your tape measure, these tape measure, they come in like different variations. There's some that don't have as many lines as this. So, but this one does have a lot of lines, but that's by the way. So the way I will be converting these part of the proportion tables and then all this other part that is written in centimeters, the way I'll be converting it is basically just by noting the point where the measurement falls. I'm just going to use that part right up here on the top where it is in inches. So you see this top part is also in inches, and then the bottom part here is in centimeters. So for example, if we're going to measure 7.5 cm for whatever, so if I was to measure 7.5 cm, I'm just going to come right here. So this is my 7.5 cm, and then the next point above this is right about here. Now I wouldn't know what to call this in inches, so I will just be marking it exactly as here. Or another way is we can round it up to the nearest whole number. That's another way. 1 cm is not going to drastically change your pattern, right? So it's either you mark it exactly at the point where it's right up here above, or you just round it up to the nearest whole inch or the nearest whole number. In this case, 7.5 will mean 3 inches. That is the best way and the easiest way I feel like you might get this. And then also, I just want to say, if you're able to do it in centimeters, centimeters gives you a more accurate reading when it comes to drafting this bodice block, because inches comes in just too many fractions. So if you're able to draft into centimeters, I feel like that is still the best way to do so. But yes, we're doing it in inches, so this is what we're going to be doing. So next, we're going to be grading for this size, right? For a bust 47, which is 119 centimeters. So if you see the sequence that this is following, it's increasing with 4 cm for every size larger. So here will be 120 cm, right? That is the next bust size, 120 cm. Then here, the point O, we're going to increase with 0.5. So here our point O will be 5 cm. Next, the back neck width, we're going to increase with 0.5 as the same sequence here. So here we're going to have 9 cm. Then here, the depth of armhole or the bust line is 24.5. This increases with 0.5. So here I'm going to make it 25 cm. I will be converting this to inches later, but let's just write it in centimeter as it is written down here first, and then I'll change it to inches as I go. Now the back up, which is the back under on point here, 6.5, 7, 7, 7. The next one is going to be 7.5. Then here for the dart, this goes up with 0.5 for every side. So I'll make this 11 cm. And then for the armhole, this goes with 2 cm. So here I'm going to make this 54 cm, right? So here I've written out my proportion part in centimeters. Now I'm going to convert it over here to inches. So here for the point O, we had 5 centimeters, right? So 5 centimeters kind of falls almost at 2 inches, just almost. So I will be changing that to the nearest whole number or the nearest whole inch, as I said. So our point O is going to be 2 inches, right? So I'm going to put 2 inches right here. Next, my back neck width was 9 cm. So here I'm just going to see where my 9 cm falls by just looking at the part above, which is in inches, and this is on 3.5 inch, right? So here my back neck width is 3.5 inch. Next we have 25 cm for the bust line. So here 25 cm in inches is about 9 3/4, because 25 is literally just a tiny bit step away from it. So I'll be using 9 3/4 inch. Like I said, guys, less than 0.25 cm does not do anything to the pattern. It does not change your pattern drastically. So you could just leave it at that. So for the bust line, 25 cm is going to be 9 3/4 inch. So here, 9 3/4, like so. Next, our back on the arm point is 7.5 centimeters. So here, 7.5 centimeters is, I will be rounding that up to 3 inches, because this is where 7.5 cm is, and then this is where 3 inches is. Literally the next tiny line right next to it. So it's good for 3 inches. So here, the backup will be 3 inches. Next, for the dots, which is 11 centimeters. So here, this is where 11 centimeters is, and then right on top is the next one. So I will be using 4.25 inch as that, because this is where 11 is, and just look at where 4.75 is. So yes, I will be using 4.25 for that. So this will be 4.25 inch. Now for the armhole, which is 54 centimeters, that will be at, so here is where 54 centimeters is, and this falls exactly on 21.25 inch. So I'll be using 21.25 inch as my approximate armhole width. So that is 21.1/4 inch. I hope you guys are with me so far. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to divide these measurements into half and into quarter. Now, the ones that I'm dividing is the circumference of the bust, the waist, the hip, and then the back width, and then chest width. So this is how I'll be dividing it. Super easy. You don't even need a calculator to do that. To divide bust 47 into half, first of all, just going to note my 47 inches right here. Next, I'm going to fold my tape measure to meet where 47 is at, and then just squeeze my tape right when it gets to the center, like so, and then whatever I get here, that is half of it. So half of the bust is 23.5 inch, and then quarter, to divide that into another half, place my tape right where this 23 is at, bring my tape back to that point, like so, squeeze super tight so that you don't miss that point, and then whatever you have here is your quarter. So this is 11.75, right? 11.75. So half of that is 11.75 inch. Next, we're going to divide the waist. So the waist is 39 inches. So here's my 39 inch. Bring my the tip of my tape over here. Squeeze super tight. Make sure you get the actual point so that you don't miss it. And here is 19.5, 19.5. And then to divide this into another two, to get the quarter measurement, squeeze super tight, and then this is 9.75. Next, we're going to divide the hip. 51. It's 25 and a half. And then into another 2. That's 12 and 3/4. Next, we're dividing the back with 17. That's 8 and a half. And then into another 2. That is 4 1/4. Next, we're dividing the chest width, which is 16 inches. So 16, that is 8 inches. And then half of that is 4. But however you guys are able to do it, if you want to use your calculator, that's fine too. But this is the method I like to use. Let's take a rectangle of paper 75 cm long. The width should be at least half bust plus 5 cm or half hips plus 3 cm, whichever is the larger, with an extra 4 to 5 cm added for margin. Just get a rectangle of paper. The length should be 75 centimeters long, and then the width should be either half of your bust plus 5 cm or half of your hips plus 3 cm, whichever is the larger. That means if your bust is larger than your hip measurement, you're going to use half of the bust plus 5. But if your hip measurement is larger than your bust size, you're going to use half of the hips plus 3 cm. And then in that mix, you're just going to add either 4 cm or 5 cm extra for margin. Now, this 5 cm or 4 cm margin is just these outer lines. So let's start here. So here it says half bust plus 5 or half hips plus 3. So looking at my measurement here, the hip is definitely larger than the bust, right? So we're going to use half hip plus 3, which is, in this case, half of our hip measurement here is 25 and a half. Plus 3 cm in this case is 1 1/4. So it's going to be half hip plus 1 1/4 inch. Half hip is 25 and a half plus 1 1/4. So that is 26 3/4. With this now, I'm going to add another 2 inches, which is for the margin. So the total width of our paper will be 26 3/4 plus 2 inches. Now, this is going to give us 28 3/4. Now, for the length, it says the length should be 75 centimeters long. So 75 centimeters in inches is 29 and a half. So the length of this paper is going to be 29 and a half inch. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that right now. Length of my paper, which is at this point. So I'm going to take that same measurement across to the other side of the paper just to have a straight line. So again, I've gone ahead to mark my length, 29 and a half inch right here. And I've also gone ahead to mark it across to the other side of the paper just to have a straight line. Next, we're going to get the width. Sometimes I like to add a little bit extra in between. It is optional. If you don't want to get confused, you can just use the exact width with the margin, just like we've done here. So in this case, I'll just add 1 inch just in case the hip tends to overlap. This is just going to give me 29 3/4. So this will be my final width of the paper, right? Starting from here to get my width now, 29 3/4 is going. 29 3/4 is going to be right here. Next, I will be taking that same measurement to the other side of the paper as I did here. So 29 3/4 is going to go across towards the other side of the paper here. This in so that you can see the exact points. Let's see how they look when we're done. So now that I've gotten my length here and then my width, the next thing I'm going to be marking out is the margin. And here for the margin, we added 2 inches. So from this edge here, I will be marking 1 inch in for my first margin. Here. Remember guys, we're trying to mark out these lines and this one, this point right here, before we get to the actual part where the bodice is going to fit into. So mark the first one. I'm going to roll that across like so. So that is my first margin. And then I'm going to do the same across the other side of the paper. So both my margins are checked. It says it is also convenient, though not essential, to use a line across the top 2 to 3 cm below the top edge of the paper or parallel to it, calling it the top line. So basically they want us to draw another margin from the top. So from the top here, I'm going to mark 1 1/4 inch as my top margin. And then do the same across the other end of the paper, right? And then just connect. So once we've done that, we're just going to call this top line. Moving on, the left hand side is the center back. So I'm going to mark here. And then the right edge, which is on my right hand side, is my center front line. We are going to be starting from the back. So it says on the CB line, mark point O 3 cm below the top line. So here's our top line. So the next thing we're trying to do is to get this point here. So for a bust 92, the point O starts at 3 centimeters, but we're not drafting a bust 92. We're drafting a bust 47 inches, which is about 119 centimeters. And we've also gone ahead to grade our own bust size. So for our point O, we're going to be using 2 inches, which we've already marked out here. So starting from the top line, basically just going to measure 2 inches down like so to get our point O, which is what I've done right here. So this is 2 inches and then this is our point O. So our new measurement point is going to be here and not here. So the first thing we're going to measure is 40 cm for the waistline. This is specific to your own measurement. That's your center back length to waist. But here, our waistline is 15.5 inches right here. So our waistline here is 15.5 inch. It is the same as length to waist. Center back length to waist, we have 15.5 inch. So that is what we're going to measure from this point down. So here, starting from here, I am going to mark 15.5 inch as my waistline. 15.5 inch. So this is my waistline. Next, I am going to mark the hip line, which is 22 cm below the waist. Now, this measurement does vary based on, figure, based on height. It starts at 22 and then it can go up onto about 28 centimeters. But because this size is a lot bigger than bust 92, I will be using 10.5 inch. Now, hip depth is 10.5 inch, and I just marked the 10.5 inch from the waistline, which I'm going to do here. Now, the next measurement is the bust line. Now, the bust line is the same as the armhole depth. This measurement was given on the proportion table, so we're gonna come here and see what it is. So here our depth of armhole is 9 3/4 inch. So right from our point O, we're going to mark that here. So this is point O, bust line, waistline, and hip line right here. Next, for back line, always halfway between point O and the bust line. So in this case, our bust line is 9 3/4. So we're just going to round that up to 10 inches so that when we're dividing, we have it as a whole number. Point O to your bust line, half of it is how you get your back line. So dividing this is now going to be 5 inches. Next line we're going to measure is the shoulder line, which is this line right here. Here to get that, it says 3 cm for the shoulder line, a fixed proportion for all sizes. So 3 cm in inches is 1 1/4 inch. So to get that, marking from my point O as usual, I'm going to mark 1 1/4 inch. All these points that we've marked, we're going to extend to the center front. Hip line, the bust line, and the waistline going to the center front. And then the other lines, back line, which is this, and the shoulder line and the neckline should be about less than halfway across. To do this, I'm going to mark these same points here. I'm going to mark them on the center front line. We started with the point O. Although the front point O is not as low as the back, but we're just going to note those points so that we have a straight line. So our point O was 2 inches, if you guys remember. Here, I'm just noting that tiny bit of point here. The first line we're extending is the bust line, which is the 9 3/4 inch. So from here, I'm going to mark my 9 3/4 inch. The next one is the 15.5. I'm measuring that from this point. So 15.5 inch as the waistline. The next one is the 10.5 inch, which is the hip line. That measurement, we took it from the waistline. So from there, 10.5 inch, I will just be ruling out those lines now. Here, point O is going to be extended as our neckline. So we're just going to extend to about halfway. So here, to have a straight line, I'm going to measure 2 inches. I'm going to measure 2 inches here. Just note that 2 inch point. And then from here, I'm going to mark 1 1/4. Remember, 1 1/4 inch was our shoulder line. And then the next one is 5 inch for our back line. So I will be extending this to about halfway across. Like I said, that's not a specific measurement. They just want it to be that long. So I will just make this 5.5. Now it says on the back line, third line from the top, measure from the CB, half back measurement. Here our back measurement is, that's the back width. We had 8.5 inch. Measuring from the CB, so right here. So that's half back, here to here, 8.5 inch. Now through this point, draw a vertical construction line parallel to CB, just crossing the line above and the line below. So crossing the line above, which is the shoulder line, and crossing the line below, which is the bust line. I'm marking the same thing here on the bust line, which is 8.5. And then taking that same point up on the shoulder line rather, 8.5 inches. And then I'm going to connect those 3 points like so. on the bust line, which is this line, as mark half back. Here to here is already our half back. So the next thing they want us to add is 5.5 cm and mark the underarm point. In place of this 5.5 cm, we already did our conversion, so we're marking 3 inches as the back underarm point. So here, 3 inches, and then we're going to call here P, which is underarm point or back underarm point. Now, on the shoulder line, the line above, measure half back plus 2 cm and mark the shoulder point SP. Now, they're taking us to our shoulder line. Here to here is already the half back. Next, they want us to mark 2 cm. So 2 cm in inches is 3/4 inch. So we're going to call here SP. SP is for shoulder point. So the next thing we're going to do is measure the neck width. The back neck width for our size, which is 9 cm. And our 9 cm converted to inches is 3.5 inch. On the neckline, we're going to mark 3.5 inch, like so. And from this point, we're going to take it higher up with 2 cm. So 2 cm converted to inches is 3/4 inch. And P, which is the neck point. To draw the neckline, drew from the NP towards the point O. I just use the slightest part of the curve, and then I just connect it like so. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is connect the neck point to the shoulder point. To draw our armhole, keep the armhole straight for about 3 cm near the backline level. So 3 cm converted to inches is. Next, hollow it out at the angle. I'm going to look for the center part of this angle. And then take another 3 cm from this angle just as a guide for getting the armhole. Now 3 cm is 1.25 inch. So from the point of the angle, I'll just mark 1.25 inch as a guide. So when I'm drawing my armhole, I'm going to take it from this point, passing through here, keeping here straight, and then finally drawing it out. Remember how they said keep this point straight? So the next thing we are moving on to do is to draw the hip lines. So on the hip line, I'm measuring quarter hip measurement plus half inch. And my quarter hip measurement in this case is 12 3/4 plus half. So half of my hip will be 13 1/4 inch. Hip point. So let's draw the straight side symbol connecting UP and HP. For the straight side seam, we're going to take it 2 cm in at the waist. 3/4 is our 2 cm. So in at the waist here, I'm going to mark 3/4 inch. We're going to draw the shape here. Now, before we move to the front part, this is going to address how to, get the actual shoulder length without it being longer when you make your pattern or when you cut your pattern out, okay? Check the length of the shoulder seam, which should be at least 1 cm, but on an average, 1.5 to 2 cm longer than the shoulder measurement. In this example, 14 cm. Now, lengthen or shorten if necessary, keeping SB on the same level, that is the shoulder line. That 1.5 cm is what is then used as the back dart. If your shoulder is your exact shoulder measurement, now you want to make sure you have 1.5 or 2 cm more. Now this is how you lengthen. If I was to lengthen my shoulder length I'm going to extend this line. Make sure SP is on the same level, shoulder line. For example, my actual shoulder was 15.5. And now at my 2 cm right here, going to connect from the NP to this new point. This is how you lengthen the shoulder. From this point, connect my new armhole. This is how to lengthen. Now, if you were to shorten, say my actual shoulder was 12.5. So if I was to shorten this, place it on the SP line. So to get 2 cm, I'll need 14.5. So basically what I'll do is, once that 14.5 cm hits my shoulder line right here, I'll just mark that point and then also reconnect the shoulder like so. And then remember to always reconnect it back to the armhole. That's how you lengthen and shorten. Having explained all that, now let's come back to our own measurement here and then check what the shoulder is to see if we have a 1.5 or 2 cm excess than our actual shoulder. Shoulder measurement here is 6 inches, right? So let's see what this measures. It is 6 inches. Now we need either 1.5 or 2 cm to add to this to get our real shoulder measurement, because we do want a dot for this pattern. Okay, and that's 6 inches right here. 2 cm, which is 3/4 inch, is right here already. It's already done from the example that I was given. So here is already our 3/4 inch. I'm just going to already mark out those lines because I've already done it while explaining. Okay, so here I've connected a new shoulder point. So guys, we're moving to the front. So we already have these 3 major lines: bust line, waistline, and hip line. So the only lines we're going to add now is this chest line, shoulder line, and line for the base of the neck. Point O is going to start from this point. So I will be marking here as my point O and not below like we did in the back. Measuring from O down the CF line, mark the following points: 4.5 cm for the shoulder line, and then here in bracket it says 4 cm for larger sizes. But because we're drafting a size bigger than bust 92, we're going to use 4 cm because it said 4 cm for larger sizes. So 4 cm is 1.5 inch. From here, we're going to mark 1.5 inch for our shoulder line. 1.5 inch, and that is our shoulder line. Next, we're going to mark the base of the neckline. And for the base of the neckline, I will be using 8 cm. 8 cm in inches is about, so as usual, measuring from point O, I'm going to mark that point right here. From the bust line, we're taking 4 cm up. 4 cm is about 1.5 inch. We're just extending, these other lines like we did in the back to about halfway across. So to do this, remember how we're going to mark here to here to make sure we have a straight line. So here, the first line we did was 1.5. First line was the shoulder line. The next one is the neckline for the front. And then this one is the chest line. So we're measuring the width of the neckline for the front on this point O. Our neck width 3.5 inch, same as the back. So here we're going to mark 3.5 inch. And then here will be our neck points. So here I've gone ahead to mark the neck width, which was 3.5 inch right here. So the same measurement we took here, we're going to take that same measurement here, which is 3.5 inches. So here from this angle, I'm just going to mark the center of this angle right here. And then from that point, they said mark 3 cm but for larger sizes 3.5. And because this size we're drafting is larger than the bust 92, we're going to go ahead and use 3.5 cm. So 3.5 cm in inch is, so I'm going to mark that point here. Right here. On the shoulder line, measure from the CF 16.5 cm for all sizes, which means this is constant no matter the bust size you're drafting. So we're going to measure from the CF line 16.5 cm, and 16.5 cm in inches is 6.5 inch to be exact. And we're going to go ahead and measure 6.5. Now this is just a point to guide us to draw our shoulder seam. Connect NP passing through this point and leaving the line about 20 to 22 centimeter long. That measurement is not specific to the shoulder length. They just want us to make the length of that line that long. So 22 cm in inches is about 8.5 inch. So passing from NP, connecting to this point, this new point we just marked, which was 6.5 from the shoulder on the shoulder line. So we're going to connect like here, passing through this point, and then basically just make this line long. So the next thing we're measuring is quarter chest on the bust line. So our quarter chest is 4 inches. So from the CF here, I'm going to mark 4 inches right here. And from this last point and from 2 cm below it, basically they want us to drop this point down, further down with 2 cm. And 2 cm in inches is about 3/4 of an inch. Now they want us to extend this measurement all the way to the top line. So measure this on the top line, mark the same point. This same measurement is the same measurement here. From this point, measure 2 cm to the left, and 2 cm in inches is 3/4 of an inch. So once I've marked this point up here, I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch towards the left hand side. To connect this new point we've marked down to meet this point. From this point, they want us to measure the size of our dot. So based on our bust size, from these proportions that we've done, our dot size is 4.25 inch. From this point, I'm going to mark 4.75 inch as my dot width. Next, I'm going to connect this point to meet this point here. Now to get the final shoulder length, so basically whatever the shoulder length is, you're adding the size of the dot to it to get the final shoulder length. In this case, our shoulder length was 6 inches, and then our dot width was 4.25. Right? So 6 plus 4.25, that's going to make 10.25 inch. So our final shoulder is going to be 10.25 inch. So from the NP, I'm just going to mark 10.25 inch. Now we're going to call here SP for shoulder point. So here's our SP. So on the chest line, we're measuring half of our chest width. And in this case, our chest width was 16, and then half of that measurement is 8 inches. So from the CF, we're going to measure 8 inches, and then they went further to say missing out the dot. Okay, that means they want you to measure the half chest measurement, but this dot should not be a part of that measurement. So I'm going to show you how to do it 2 ways. Is either you miss out the dot when you're measuring, or basically just add this dot to the half chest measurement. It gives you the same. Okay, so if I was to measure missing out the dots, this is how I would do it. So I'm going to start from the CF. Now, once I get to the point where wherever this point hits on my tape measure, I am going to just note that point right here, move it away from the dot here, and then measure my half chest measurement, which is 8 inches right here. So here we're calling it CHP. Or you can just add this dot to your chest, half of your chest width, right? Now rule a line between SP and CHP and drop a short perpendicular on the bust line as a guide for drawing the armhole. So basically we're connecting this point to this point right now. Now, once we've done that, they said drop a short perpendicular to the bust line or on the bust line. So basically we're using this same measurement, we're using the same measurement here. And I'm just going to measure here again to see what that is. So that is about 9 inches. So from this point here, mark 9 inches and then connect like so. So this is how we're going to get the bust width of the front. We're going to use half bust plus 5 cm in inches. 5 cm is 2 inches minus the back. In this case, half bust is 23.5 plus 2 inches minus the width on the back here along the bust line. So this measurement is 11.5, okay, minus 11.5. Half of our bust is 23.5 plus 5, that is 25.5 minus 11.5. So the final answer here is 14 inches. So the bust width of the front is going to be 14 inches. I'm going to mark 14 inches on the bust line, and 14 inches is right around here. So here I'm going to call it UP, which is the front underarm point. Now they want us to draw the armhole along this new points that we've marked, right? They want us to take this line 1 cm in. Because they didn't state at what points they want us to move the 1 cm in exactly, we're just going to use half of this line. It's 6 3/4 inch. So I'm just going to fold my tape measure into 2 to get that exact point, like so. Mark it here, and then from that point I'm taking 1 cm. So here, this is where 1 cm falls, and I'm just going to put that right here and mark in. Okay, next they said from this angle here, you're going to take it 1.5 cm from this point. So 1.5 cm is falling right here. Okay, mark that point around the center of the angle, like, and then I connect. Next, we're going to connect passing through this point. Armhole dips slightly below the bust line before reaching here. Starting from SP, we're going to pass it through that point in and then get to this point. Now from this point, so we're going to try this. I think this one's going to give us a more continuous curve than the others. So I'm going to use that. Well, so I'm going to try to reblend it out so that I have a more seamless curve, but I'm going to make sure it still stays at this point here. Now, the next one we're trying to get is the HP, which is the hip point. Okay. To get the hip point, use quarter hip measurement plus 2.5 or 3. In this case, 3 cm is about 1 1/4 inch, and quarter of our hip measurement is 12 3/4 plus 1 1/4 is 14. And here I'm going to mark 14 inches. To get the straight side seam, we're just going to connect UP and HP together. And the next thing to do is measure in at the waist to get the shaped side seam. We're going to take it in with 1.5 in at the waist. So 1.5 is somewhere around here. So from the waist point in, next it says draw the lower waistline, which is also called the true waistline. To draw the true waistline, now when you're making a larger size, so say any size from bust 92, and in this example our bust size is 47, right? So if I was going to draw the lower waistline for bust 47, I'll use 2.5, because here it says yes 2.5 is the max, so either 2 or 2.5, but in this case I'll be using 2.5 cm. And then when I come to the side of the waist, I'm going to drop it down with 1 cm. Usually it doesn't exceed 1 cm by the sides, so 2.5 cm in this case is 1 inch. And then towards the side I'm going to drop it with 1 cm, and 1 cm is right around here. Okay, so I'm going to drop it down with 1 cm on the sides of both the front and the back. Now you're just going to connect from this point to this point using a slight curve. So I'm just going to connect like so. So this now is the lower waistline. So if I'm making anything that has a cut on the waist, this is the line I'm going to cut through. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the same to the back. Connect with my French curve like so. But before I connect it to the center back, I always like to do the slanted center back. Now slanted back is a form of waist shaping, right? You could leave the back straight, but a form of waist shaping is also slanting the back. Okay, now we're going to get to waist shaping after we finish plotting the dots, so that you see how it's distributed. I'll explain all that process. Okay, so like I said, before I go ahead and draw the lower waistline for the back, I'm going to slant the center back. And to slant the center back, basically it's just taking 2 cm from the waistline on the CB, and 2 cm is 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to connect from this side to this new point that I just marked, like so. All right, finish my slanted back. I'm going to connect this point to meet the back line. And then from here, I'm going to measure 15 cm to connect the slanted back up to. So 15 cm in inches is about 6 inches. Mark that right here and then connect. So for full bodies, you want to connect your slanted back to here. But if you're just using a half bodies, you could do it up to here. The next thing we're going to do is draw the true bust line 4 cm below the bust line of the draft. Now the true bust line is usually around the fullest part of your bust line. So 4 cm in inches is about 1.5 inch. We want us to finalize the shape of the shoulder dart. So to do that, we're going to fold this dart here, making sure the fold goes towards the neckline. So fold like so. Make sure it's folded and it's laying. And once we've done that, we'll make sure you trace over the folded part of the dart. Now once you unpin, you're just going to follow the new high points here up on the shoulder dart, like so. So when you're cutting out your pattern, you always want to cut through this mark, through this point, like so. Instead of cutting your shoulder straight, you're going to cut through this new point. Well, let's plot the dots. Okay, so to plot the waist dart for the front, we're going to be using quarter of our chest measurement, and in this case, quarter of our chest measurement is 4 inches. Okay, so from the waistline, we're going to mark on the true waistline, that is, we're going to mark 4 inches. So this 4 inches will be the center of our waist dart. The front dart is 3 cm in width, and then the back dart is 2 cm in width. Okay, so for a 3 cm dart, we're going to measure 1.5 cm on each side of the center line. Okay, so 1.5 cm is right here. This is where 1.5 cm is, so I'll just be using that point in inches. So I'm going to mark that here, 1.5, or here. So to mark the length of the dart above the waistline, we're going to use 12 cm. 12 cm in inches is about 4 3/4 of an inch. So from this point, I'm going to mark 4 3/4 of an inch. But I'm going to make sure these points align. So we're going to come around here and also mark my quarter chest width, which is 4, so that I have a straight line. And then from that point, I can now mark my 4 3/4 inch as the length of my darts above the waistline. Okay, now for the bottom part, I'm going to use 15 cm. 15 cm is right here, is at, and then I'm going to mark like so. But first, I'm going to come to the CF and also measure the 4 inch to make sure I get a straight line, a straight dart. So next I'm marking 15 cm, which is right around here. Okay. Okay, so for the waist dart on the back side, we're going to be using quarter back width, and our quarter back width is 4 1/4 inch. Because we're using the slanted center back, we're going to measure that 4 1/4 inch from the new point here. To mark the center, I'm going to mark 4 1/4 inch right here. So to draw the center line, I want to have a straight line. So to do that, I'm going to take the measurement from here, because this is a straight line. I'm going to use this straight line as a guide. So basically, I'm going to measure from here to here, just so my line up here is straight. Okay, so I have 5 inches. So I'm just going to extend this 5 inch here, and then also at this point. This is just for me to have a straight line. Okay, next I'm going to mark the length of the dart above the waistline. So above the waistline, for the front I use 12 cm, but for the back I'm going to use 13 cm. 13 cm is about, I'll note that point right here, and then 15 cm below the waist. So 15 cm is about slightly before 6. So, and then I'll note that point here. So we're going to connect the center line first. Next, for the width, I'm going to be using 1 cm. Back waist dart is 2 cm wide. 1 cm is, and then I'm just marking that both ways on each side of the center of the dart. All right. Now the final thing to do is to plot the shoulder darts for the back. Okay. Remember how they told us to make sure our shoulder seam is 1.5 to 2 cm longer than our actual shoulder length. Now that excess they wanted us to add in between there was for the dart allowance. Okay, so if your excess on the shoulder is 1.5, so it means the size of your back shoulder dart is going to be 1.5 cm. If your excess was 2 cm, it means your dart is going to be 2 cm. To plot the dart, I'm going to mark the center line from this new SP to the NP. So I'm going to mark the midpoint between the SP and the NP to plot my dart, right? So here midway between this point is, this is 6 3/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to fold my tape measure like so. So this is right about here. So the center of my dot will be right here. Now for the length of this dot is, I think, 8 to 9 cm. So I will be using 8 cm in this case. Now to mark the length of the dots, I will be aligning it to this point of the back waist dot. And mark this point. So just going to connect like so. And then here, the excess we had was 2 cm. So for that 2 cm, it means half of my dot is going to be, so 2 cm is about it's about 3/4 of an inch. So half of 3/4 of an inch is right here. So just mark that this way and this way. Now, if you've seen some of my videos, there's a way I show you how to get rid of it if you don't want it on certain garments or certain styles and designs. So guys, basically we are done for now. This is the front part, we're all done, and then this is the back part. All right, moving to the post that I made, where I was asking you guys concerning drafting the bodies, like what problems have you encountered. Most of the feedback was mostly around the dots, the back shoulder dot, the armhole. Some had concerns about tightness around the sleeves, so I'll be addressing a few of those things. Some of them I might be able to answer in the comment section, because the major ones I'll show you on the pattern. I'm going to read this paragraph. I'll just explain a few things, but this is mostly centered around the armhole, because one thing I want to say first is any basic bodice block you draft, it always needs to be fitted. It means that there's room for alterations, right? From your first basic block, you have to make to test the fit. As finally, before cutting out the pattern, check the armhole, measuring first around the back and then round the front part of it with the tip held on edge. This makes it easier to follow the armhole curve and gives a more accurate result. The total armhole size should be 12 to 13 cm more than the top arm measurement. Correct if necessary, or leave to be corrected at the fittings. So after you're finished drafting your pattern, you want to come back to the armhole and check. So now we're going to measure around our armhole to see what we have. Remember, it says the final armhole on the pattern should be 12 to 13 cm more than your top arm measurement. And in this case, our top arm measurement was 16.5 inches, which is 42 cm. So let's measure around the armhole now. So you want to make sure you hold it on an edge like this. You hold the tape like this. This way you can bend and follow the curve perfectly. So we're going to start from the SB here. Basically just putting it around, going around my armhole curve like so. We have 23.5 inch. 23.5 inch. So 23 minus 23.5 minus 16.5, 7 inches. So in this case, the excess that we need should just be about 5.25 inch. But in this case, we now have about 1.25 inch more excess. It says correct if necessary, or leave to be corrected at the fitting. Now we know that we have enough excess as the book wanted us to have. We have 7 inch excess, but then we now have an extra excess of about 1.25 inch. Now here it says we could correct it, or we can leave it to be corrected at fitting. I'm going to show you how to correct that. I'm showing you two things. I'm showing you how to reduce the excess on the armhole and how to get more room around the armhole. So if you want to get more room around the armhole, you're going to drop the armhole down. Okay. If you want to reduce the excess around the armhole, you're going to move the UP up. If I was to create more room around the armhole, I'm going to drop it down with 1 cm, or say 1/2 inch, like so, and then I'll just reconnect. Now, if I wanted to reduce the excess around the armhole, I'm just going to bring this part up with 1/2 inch. So either you use 1/2 inch or you use 1 cm. So I'm going to use 1/2 inch. So here, raise the UP with 1/2 inch and take around here. Above is reducing the excess, and then below is creating more room. Okay, like I said, you don't have to do it on your pattern right away. Now that I've done this here, I'm going to go ahead and remeasure this new armhole. Remember, we had about 1¼ inch excess. So let's just go back and remeasure and see what that has gotten to. Let's see if it's actually reduced or not. Now, after fixing this part, it measures now at 22¼ inch instead of 23¼